And this is Thursday, October 8th, 2020, and this is part 2 of Logic Pro class today. Okay, so we were in the score window looking at this, and we had just assigned pound drums, and we were taking a little tour of pound drums staff style. It's a map staff style with 2 voices, and you can see the drum groups that are here. And you're welcome to explore this, but for right now, what these numbers mean is they determine where these drum groups will be displayed. So do you recall that we have a snare drum group and it says -2? And that means that it's being displayed 2 lines down from the top line. If I change this -2 to be 0, and then I have to, this is weird, but I have to force the screen to redraw some way to do that. What I wish is that as soon as you make a change here, it automatically reflected there. But sometimes you have to close the score window and then reopen it. Oh, that's still not doing the job, is it? This snare drum should have gotten moved up there when I set this to be position 0. Looks like nothing is really working. I guess I have to do it manually. So when I drag it, it's working. Do you see that?
Are you on the right staff style?
Yes, I am. And it worked as soon as I drug it. It just didn't, when I typed it, it didn't do it. But see, I'm dragging it now. And it's moving it back and forth. Do you see it going? So position 0 is the top line. Position 1 is, or -1 is 1 line down. Do you see that? And position -1/2 is halfway between the lines. So the lines are 0, -1, -2, -3, -4. And that's the reason why bass drum is being displayed on the bottom line. It's because it says -4. Now there's something called the Weinberg standard for drum notation, and they would prefer that the bass drum be displayed at -3.5. So that's how it looks in the Weinberg system. And I'm going to show you that format at some point. But I'm just wanting you to see that the position here is what determines where on the staff a particular drum group will get displayed. Are we seeing that? Okay, I'm going to close this staff style completely and just make a new one from scratch now. So I'm going to show staff styles, and I'm just going to make a brand new one. New mapped style. There it is, and we're going to name our new map style space, I should say, percussion 1. I found it very helpful to have the names of your staff styles, your mapped staff styles, match the name of your mapped instrument, so you don't get so confused about what you're doing. So I recommend that highly. And as you can see, by default, it's only got a single voice, and right now it says bass drum. So we have to assign it over here now. So do you see that because I made it in this window, it now is available to be chosen here? So now I'm going to choose it. And so right now, let's take a look. This map staff style is using the drum 1 clef. That's why it's got a single line and has that percussion clef. If I chose, let's say, drum 5, it will look like that. If I chose drum 3, it would look like that. Okay? So you just pick the clef you want. And I think that I would like to put kick or bass drum and snare on the same staff, but I want bass drum to be down. Let me see if I can move this up a little bit. No. So I want bass drum to be on the bottom line. So I'm going to put it on a 3-line staff, but I put bass drum on the bottom line by choosing -2. And now I'm going to add another drum group right here. So here is where you add more voices. Here is where you add more staves. Here is where you add drum groups to the currently selected voice. So here I'm going to click on this plus, and I have a new drum group. But this one is going to be snare, and it's at position 0. Now notice when I did that, it forgot my clef, so I'm going back here and saying drum.3. So I had to come back and rename my clef, or reselect my clef for drum.3. So now I have bass drum at -2, meaning 2 lines down from the top. And I have snare, the snare drum group, at position 0, which is where you see it. That's the top line. So again, that's position 0. That's position -1. This is position -2, and so forth. So this is what I meant by you can take any note and have it be a part of a drum group, which can be displayed on any line in the score. Okay? So it lets you have great flexibility about creating percussion parts that look sensible. So now let's get the crash cymbal into this, the Piatti. And for that, I'm just going to make a separate voice. So here I go, new voice. And actually, I think I'll make it be a new staff. So here we go, new staff. And I'm going to choose drum 1. It was already there. And to drum 1, I'm going to assign the cymbals drum group. And there's my crash cymbals. If I didn't assign the cymbals drum group, of course, here's the bass drum. There's the bass drum group now on that single line. Do you see it's just duplicating what's there? So I choose my drum group here to display on the line I've chosen in the voice and staff I have chosen. So there's that. And I'd like these to be connected. So I'm going to connect these bar lines and the left edge bar line and the bracket. So notice that I've got a left edge bar line and a bracket, but I don't have the connecting bar line because I didn't click there. There's the connecting bar line, but I don't want that right now anyway. Maybe I will later. Are we good so far? Now I'm going to add another staff. And this one is going to be the congas. But I'm going to make it be drum.2. And there it is. There's the congas. The reason I chose drum.2 is because that has 2 lines. And now I have high conga and low conga. And the reason they're taking different positions, even though the conga drum group is at position 0, is because back in the environment, the mapped instrument, here I have to close this so you can see. In here, for the conga, I have the low conga having a relative position of down 1. Do you see it? So because in the mapped instrument, the low conga has a relative position of down 1, we're able to have then in the map staff style, we're able to have the overall conga drum group be at position 0, meaning the top line, but the low conga is still down 1 for its relative position. Now observe this. If I chose say drum group or drum.5 as my clef, so I just chose drum.5, I could have the congas be displayed for their absolute position at -1. So now this is high conga, and here's low conga, 1 line lower than the default line for the conga drum group. So you see how you have just utter control over where things will be. And I'm going to go back to drum.2. And actually, I think now I'd like to connect those up. So connecting lines. And if you want to have connecting lines, you can. You know, I just put them in that time. And so now there's some other things you have control of. One of them is spacing. So you see that by default, these just all have a space of 70 above and below. And you can certainly sit here and adjust the numbers if you want to. But it's probably faster just to grab the clef over here. Actually, when you're in the view that we're in, the linear view, come over here to this space and drag. And do you see that it reduced the space below and the space above equally as I drug it graphically? You see it increased equally the space below this and the space above that equally as I drug it graphically. So that may or may not be what you want. Sometimes you may want to have very little space below, but enough space above to put labels in. So in that case, you might decide, well, I don't need much space below this drum group, so I'm going to grab that number and drag it down. But I want to have a lot of space above this one, so I have space for labels or something, or other instructions. So now they have different values. Now see what happens when I grab this. Notice it's still changing them both, but it's keeping their relative arrangement. Okay, so you can do it either way, numerically, graphically, or a combination of the two, to create the spacing that gets you where you want to be. And you might find it useful to flip the stem direction. So right now it says stem automatic, but you could make it always be stem up if you decided. And when you're done, if you felt the need, you could select all the conga notes easily enough. If you had a whole track like this, you could select all the conga notes this way. Just select a few and then do Control Option E, and that selects all the conga notes. And now you can shorten all their stems, if that helps you in terms of your layout. That was Option D that brought the end of their stems down. So you can work very fast and efficiently and get what you want once this is set up. So now, the happy thing about all this is you don't have to do what I just did here every day. The idea, again, is you work from templates. So you create setups that you find useful, and then you reuse them. So in my master template from which I work, I have 2 percussion setups labeled percussion 1 and percussion 2, and they simply contain things I've used a lot for different projects, and so they're easily available to me. I can edit anything I need to edit to customize for a particular piece I'm working on, but it's, generally speaking, all I really have to do is just assign drum groups I've already created in my mapped instruments. So I wonder if we can assign Nathaniel here. Let's see. Yep, there's Nathaniel the scapegoat. As you can see, Nathaniel the scapegoat is playing nothing whatsoever. So you can assign a drum group with nothing in it, and you'll see nothing. So I'm just wanting you to see that whatever drum groups you create or edit in the mapped instrument are the drum groups that will appear in the mapped staff style for you to choose from to put in voices. Now, just to help you understand something, what if we would like to have all of this on one staff instead of multiple staves like this? I'm not necessarily recommending it, but you could, and it doesn't even take all that long to do. So here's what I'm going to do. First, I'm just going to delete this one and delete that one. I'm trying to delete it. There we go. And now I'm just going to add voices to this. So I'm going to add 2 more voices. Okay, so I've now added 2 voices to this one staff. I'm going to make it be drum 5. And I'm going to have bass drum be in the bottom line. So it's -4. And I'm going to have the snare drum. Actually, I think I want to add a voice, or no, I want to add a drum group to this voice. So I'm going to hit plus here and make that be my snare. And I'll make it be -2. And then this bass drum is now going to become piatti, or cymbals, I guess. There we go. And I'll make it be 0. Actually, I'll make it be +1. So it'll be up there now. See it? But I'm going to make its, the stem direction now for the lower voice is going to be down. And I have to scroll around here. So I have now bass, drum, cymbals. I just need conga. I don't need this drum group anymore, so I'm going to get rid of that one. So now I have bass, snare in the voice, and I have cymbals in a voice, and now this is going to be congas, and they're going to be stems up, just to avoid confusion. And so now I have bass drum, snare drum, cymbals, and then here is conga. So I'm not saying that you would necessarily do that, but just to show that it's possible in this setup to really just decide how you want it to look and make it look that way. And notice that none of this had any bearing on the performance. Oh, that's hysterical. I've got some kind of 16th thing going along here. Was that an electro bump doing that? I don't know. Anyway, none of that has a bearing on the actual data that's in the region. Let's see what's going on here. Wowza. I'm going to solo that. Yeah, electro bump is playing everything here. I think that maybe my mapped instrument got trashed on the crash. Let me take a look. Because I'm hearing a bunch of stuff. I think my click is maybe playing out of something. I have no idea what's going on here. I think it's an artifact of the crash, however. Let's go see. I'm really curious now. So I'm in here. Let me look at my mapped instrument for a moment. Congas are cable 2, yes. Snares, cable 3, yes. Bass drum is C1 and cable 1, yes. This all looks like what we did. By the way, you can change note heads here. So if you decide you want the crash symbol to be, I don't know, that note head, you can do that. Or whatever you pick. Here, I'll pick that one. That looks funny. And now when I go back and look in the score window, you can see what the crash symbol's note head looks like. So you can change note heads in the mapped instrument. I, however, am confused about why we're hearing all that other stuff. I'm going to run that down in a moment. By the way, sometimes when you change a note head here, if the score window is already open, it doesn't instantly reflect the change. So here I'm going to change the crash symbol to a triangle. Do you see it didn't instantly change? So sometimes you have to close the score window and then reopen it. And then the change is reflected when you change note heads here. Did you see that behavior? So if you change note heads in the mapped instrument and it doesn't instantly change in the score, you need to do something to force the score window to redraw itself. So here, I'll make it be the slash. You see it didn't change. Almost anything that just forces the score window to redraw does the job. So here, I'll go to electro bump for a moment and then go back to all instruments. And that caused it to redraw itself and show the slash now. So practically anything that just forces the score window to redraw will take care of it after you've changed the note head. For some reason, it doesn't automatically reflect. Let's see if the positions automatically reflect. So I'm going to take this low conga and make it be up 1.5. Did you see it didn't move? But now I'm going to go away and then return. And now it's moved up there. You see it? So sometimes the edits you make in the score parameters are not reflected until you do something that causes the score window to redraw itself. So you can close it and reopen it, or you can just go to a different score set and then return to your main score set. Any of those things will force the score window to redraw, and then it will reflect whatever changes you've made. And there is something that's important to know about note heads. So to illustrate this, I want to go over here. The only note heads here that do the normal behavior of being solid when they should be solid and open when they should be open are these first two. See that? So these two will do that. All these others always look this way. So if you pick this one, it doesn't look like that one if it's a half note or a whole note. It still looks like that one. Okay? So the only two note heads here that change whether they are open or solid are the first two, the slash and the regular note head. So that's just something to keep in mind when you're choosing note heads for percussion. Sometimes you're doing a percussion part that is totally a matter of hitting it. There's never any sustain involved, and therefore it's fine to use just an X or whatever you'd like as a note head. But the only note heads that actually reflect note lengths of like half notes and whole notes and that kind of thing with open note heads are the first two. So in this list here, it's these top two. So if I, those are half notes, right, for the symbol. If I change it to an X, look, it has no way. I'm going to force the screen to redraw itself. It has no way to show an open X. And what you might wish is that it would switch to this note head automatically. Here, we go ahead and do this again. You might wish that it would do that for half notes and give you the uncircled X for quarter notes or something, but it doesn't. So the only two note heads that reflect open or closed for longer, open note heads for longer note values are these first two. So please keep that in mind. By the way, you may be wondering, why does this exist as a note head? And I'll show you sometime. But for right now, you see it's just always open. So if I pick that note head and these notes and I drop it on it, look. So that's not usually what you want, is it? But once in a while, that solves a notational problem of some kind for you. So do be aware this note head exists that can be hung on any note. And in fact, you can pick any note anytime and put any of these note heads on it if it solves a problem of some kind or offers you an option. Okay, so that's basically the nuts and bolts of it. You pretty much are in control of what note on the input side triggers what note on the output side on what instrument, that's what cable it's connected to, and what its note head will be, what its relative position will be in comparison to the absolute position you set in the staff style for that drum group. And you can create as many drum groups as you need to and rename existing ones. You just can't delete drum groups once you make the name. You can assign nothing to it, but beware, if you create a drum group in your template, it may be there forever, even if you don't use it. So, if you want to propose marriage to someone, I suppose you could name one Will You and name the other one Marry Me and put them in your drum groups and then get down on one knee and show your drum group list. I know that's probably not going to happen. It just struck me as an interesting thing to do. It's probably something I would do, but that's okay. All right. Questions? I think I've shown you everything you need to know to do that map instrument and map percussion or map staff style assignment now. So I will say this. If you watched the video where I showed you how to do feathered beaming, I hope you did. If you watched the video about how to do feathered beaming, do you recall that I offered extra credit for figuring out how to fit feathered beaming into a drum group? So I'll give you a huge hint. What that consists of is creating more drum groups that you can assign notes to, and then in the staff style, assigning multiple drum groups for the same sound. And that's your way of getting extra voices. So remember that in order to do the feathered beaming, we had to have multiple voices that had different stem lengths. So the same thing is true here. So what you have to do is create separate drum groups, and I'll show you what mine looks like just so you can see it. So I'm going to close this now. And let's see, where did I put it? Here it is. Okay, so this is what that assignment looks like with the feathered beaming. And here's what my mapped staff style looks like. Look, I actually have 3 conga drum groups, you see? And I named them Duplicate 1 and Duplicate 2, just to keep my head straight about them. And notice they all display on the same position, but I have 3 conga drum groups assigned to 3 separate voices, but they're all on the same display position. And that's what we're seeing there. So as you're doing it, you initially want to assign them to different display positions so that they're separately accessible to you and you can see what's going on. And now you can pick the note whose stem you want to adjust and adjust its stem, and then put the relative position back where it was, and there you go. And now it's back to that. And here's what it looks like in the environment window. So the mapped instrument. Looks like this. And look, I had to actually create other notes. So high conga duplicate is a different note than conga. And I think I made that for conga high is what I did. The feather beaming is on conga high. So this is really high conga duplicate, yeah, and high conga duplicate 2. So if I click here, you can, just didn't keep the names, I guess. But anyway, there it is. And notice that they are outputting the same note as conga high is here. So even though it's triggered from this note, which is A sharp 3, it's outputting D sharp 3. Which means when I click that note, it's still playing D sharp 3 on the output side. And that's why we're still hearing conga. And I have my 3 different groups. And now that I have 3 notes assigned to 3 groups for high conga, now in my map staff style, I can access those 3 groups and put each one in a different voice. And now I have the same, and then hide the extra rests, right? So I hid the extra rests for the other 2 voices. And now that I've done that, now I can have them all be on the same voices, three voices all on the same line. And that's what made it possible to do this thing. But first, when I was first doing it, I went to show staff styles here, and I had these in different positions so that I could easily see them and work with them independently. Right? I had them separated so that now I can see, okay, that's, you know, a different voice than this, and this is that one, and that way I could do the stem business. And by the way, explode polyphony, remember explode polyphony? Option P. So explode polyphony also explodes this way so you can see what you're doing. And then once I had them adjusted like I wanted, had the stems adjusted like I wanted to make the feather beaming happen, then back in the map staff style, I just had to return those other 2 conga groups, the duplicate conga groups, to be back to 0. So now I have this. Okay. So that's how you do the extra credit if you have the time and the patience. This is a very powerful feature of Logic. It just does so much. You're free to leave now, but if you want to hang for a minute, I'm going to show you every other piano out of my template. But to do that, I have to load my template, which will take just a moment, but not more than that. I guess I'll get this one. Yeah, I'll get this one. I have a big orchestra template. This is just a big band template, but it will load faster than the orchestra template. So that's why I'm just loading it for right now. Okay. I'm going to this window. I'm going down here to every other piano. Okay. So listen when I play. I'm just going to play a chromatic scale. Hear what's happening? Hear how it sounds when I play? I think that's kind of cool to just kind of mix them up that way. And the way that happens is in the mapped instrument that is every other piano. I'm going to find it here. Oh, it's back this way. Here it is. Every other piano is a mapped instrument, and it has two cables out. One goes to acoustic piano, one goes to that electric piano channel strip. And just look at the cables. 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. Okay. So obviously that took a little time to set up, but now that it's set up, I can play it anytime. And of course, I'm calling it every other piano. But do you see that this could be two different synth pads or two different anythings? And you could have this kind of random thing happening while you play. You could make a really interesting pad here and a really interesting pad here. And now different notes of a chord are getting played by related but different pads and get this rich sound you can't get just by doubling two pads all the time on all the notes. So I don't want you to think of mapped instruments as only being about percussion. They can do a lot of different things for you. It's just a matter of your creativity and your way of thinking through what are some things I could do with this. So anyway, have a blessed day. And if you have questions, feel free to send me email. And I'll talk to you all soon.
Thank you.
You bet. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
You're certainly welcome. Bye-bye.